Welcome to the Explainer. So imagine this. We're talking about a modern nation-state, one completely wired with fiber optic internet, deeply tied into international trade, navigating all the complexities of 21st century geopolitics. But here's the catch. Supreme executive, legislative, and judicial power rests entirely in the hands of one single individual. You don't even have to look back into the history books to find it. This is the reality today in Eswatini. This tiny, landlocked African nation, which you might know by its former name, Swaziland, is famously overshadowed by massive billboards of its absolute monarch. It holds the unique title of being the very last absolute monarchy in Africa, and honestly, it presents one of the most fascinating political and cultural landscapes anywhere on the globe.
Okay, let's dive into this. A local observer once hit the nail on the head, saying, "It is not one but many Swazilands, with many contradictions held in balance." This quote absolutely captures our central thesis today. Eswatini is a place of intense, sometimes jarring dualities. It's a nation that seamlessly, and sometimes a bit awkwardly, blends deeply rooted ancient African traditions with the incredibly fast-paced realities of our globalized world. To really understand Eswatini, we have to unpack how a traditional agrarian society manages to operate under the immense weight of modern economic and political demands.
Here is our roadmap for making sense of it all. We'll start with Section 1, the last absolute monarchy. Then Section 2, forging the Swazi nation. Next is Section 3, the struggle for democracy, followed by Section 4, economy and public health. And finally, Section 5, Eswatini's path forward. Basically, we'll be zooming all the way out from their ancient cultural roots right up to their current global challenges.
Let's start with Section 1, the last absolute monarchy, culture and power.
At the absolute center of this nation's identity is King Mswati III. In Swazi society, the king reigns supreme. But his immense power isn't just political, right? It's profoundly linked to spiritual beliefs, the ancestors, and literally the physical landscape of the nation itself. Now, Eswatini has a really varied social structure that balances this power in unexpected ways. Just look at this fascinating dichotomy. The inheritance of material goods actually passes down through the female line, specifically to a sister's children in a matrilineal system. But when it comes to leadership, that is strictly patrilineal. The kingdom and the top ranks of the military are always led by sons. Yet women still hold significant direct power within the royal framework. The Queen Mother, who is known as the Nglovukate, or Great She-Elephant, well, she isn't just a figurehead. She is the spiritual head of state, holding vital traditional powers that serve as a crucial counterbalance to the king's administrative authority.
Moving right along to Section 2, forging the Swazi nation, from origins to independence.
Let's move to and see how this builds. Because to truly grasp the complexities of the kingdom today, we have to establish the historical context. How exactly were these power structures formed over centuries of migration, settlement, and colonization? Well, in 1889, primarily to stop the expansion of neighboring Boer republics, Swaziland became a British protectorate. This era basically hurled the nation into modernity while simultaneously stripping away local control and large swaths of land ownership. Fast forward, and the nation finally regained its independence in 1968 under King Sobhuza II. But independence didn't magically mean immediate harmony. By 1973, facing growing political discontent from an increasingly educated populace, the king proclaimed a state of emergency. He completely repealed the constitution and banned political parties. Actually, scratch that, it was a ban on all political activity and literature. For the average citizen, this meant that assembling to discuss politics or push for systemic change was suddenly illegal, which fundamentally altered the nation's political trajectory.
Next up is Section 3, the struggle for democracy, navigating political tensions. Now you might be wondering, looking objectively at the friction between the monarchy and modern democratic pressures, how exactly did the political landscape change post-independence? Well, as the newly independent nation found its footing, an educated, politically minded middle class really began to push against traditional tribal structures. And this friction set the stage for decades of complex and sometimes volatile political unrest as citizens actively sought a voice in their governance.
So the post-independence era was highly active. Organizations like the Swaziland African National Congress gained serious momentum, which directly led to the government's 1973 ban on political activity we just talked about. But the push for a multi-party system definitely persisted. The 1980s and 90s saw massive strikes and university protests, and because political parties were strictly illegal, trade unions kind of became the proxy for political opposition, organizing mass labor actions that paralyzed major industries. There were even periods of guerrilla activities by groups like the SNLF, who were operating from exile over in neighboring South Africa.
Throughout this entire period, the monarchy utilized detentions and crackdowns to maintain order, while the opposition relentlessly pushed for democratic reforms. It really exposed a deep chasm between traditional governance and democratic demands.
Which brings us to Section 4, Economy and Public Health, a nation in transition.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how it visualizes the massive structural changes in how Eswatini's citizens live and work. The dual nature of the economy is just striking. On one side, you have 1.2 million hectares dedicated to massive, large-scale plantations. On the other side, traditional smallholdings that average less than 5 hectares. That's a huge disparity. Essentially, traditional, labor-intensive farming is steadily being replaced by modernized agriculture. And this structural change is literally breaking up traditional family homesteads, pushing many citizens to become a migrant labor force that has to move towards urban centers or these large plantations just to find work.
The undisputed king of this agricultural shift is sugar, which is often dubbed Swazi gold. The Swazi economy depends heavily upon the dominant sugarcane industry, mostly located in the lowland areas near the South African border. Crucially, this industry is heavily driven by British and American industrial capital. Now, while it's considered a macroeconomic success story because of high export volumes, this deep reliance on a single globalized monoculture leaves the wider economy extremely vulnerable. It means local wages often remain low, while profits flow outward, leaving local workers trapped in precarious, seasonal labor, rather than building long-term economic autonomy.
But perhaps the most profound vulnerability the nation has faced in its modern history isn't economic at all. It was a profound human crisis. 200,000. Out of a total population of roughly 1 million people, that is the estimated number of inhabitants who were infected with HIV. To put that into perspective, that is 20% of the population. For years, Eswatini had the highest HIV prevalence among adults in the entire world. The hollowing out of the workforce was just devastating. At the height of the crisis, Eswatini was losing teachers faster than it could even train them, and agricultural output completely plummeted because the working-age population was simply too ill to harvest. It placed an immense, unimaginable strain on the entire fabric of society.
And this brilliantly illustrates an incredibly encouraging story of resilience and public health triumph. Eswatini's HIV incidence rate plummeted from over 9% in the 1990s all the way down to nearly 2% in 2016. So how did they achieve this massive drop? Through a brilliantly targeted, decentralized public health campaign. They rolled out widespread testing, scaled up lifelong antiretroviral treatments, and initiated task shifting, which basically allowed trained nurses to dispense medications in rural areas where doctors were super scarce. It stands today as a massive public health achievement and a real testament to the nation's ability to mobilize and fight back against devastating odds.
Finally, Section 5, Eswatini's Path Forward, Globalization and Youth.
So how does a nation with such deep-rooted traditions and recent triumphs balance its heritage with modern 21st century pressures? The modern economic and cultural hurdles are undeniably steep. Youth unemployment hovers at an alarming rate of over 70%, creating widespread poverty and, understandably, intense frustration. Globalization acts as a severe double-edged sword here. We're seeing an increasing homogenization of local youth culture. Younger generations are often favoring global pop culture and digital media over traditional ceremonies, which slowly shifts the cultural bedrock of the kingdom. Add to this the significant environmental degradation from unsustainable agricultural practices, and you can see that the modern challenges are immense.
So the crucial point is that Eswatini isn't just standing by. They are taking proactive steps to combat these issues. The Queen Mother has initiated vital youth empowerment projects designed to provide real, tangible economic opportunities. There's also a targeted push to reintegrate young offenders, equipping them with enterprise skills so they aren't trapped in a cycle of poverty. Plus, the country is deeply investing in sustainable geotourism. In stark contrast to those massive sugar plantations that strip the land, geotourism monetizes Eswatini's breathtaking, untouched landscapes responsibly. It brings in foreign revenue while fiercely protecting the environment and ensuring the economic benefits actually stay within local communities.
Which leaves us to ponder this final, provocative thought. Can Eswatini preserve its rich cultural mosaic while successfully navigating the intense currents of globalization? It's a tiny kingdom dwarfed by its neighbors, yet it holds this captivating, delicate balance of an absolute monarchy and modern democratic aspirations, of ancient traditions and global economics. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration into Eswatini, a true kingdom of contradictions. Keep asking questions and keep exploring.